As we do on Mondays lately, we've been meandering into the world of animals, and it's sort of a check-in in a sense on the planet generally, I think, because our relationship with the animal kingdom, in my judgment, is a critical one. We're really, I mean, religious we are, any of us, but and some of us are maybe we're very religious, but the one part of those religions that speak about the unity of everything, the oneness, is that Buddhism, I guess, talks a lot about that. But if you really see us as all together, we're all pieces of the same stuff, then you look maybe at the animal kingdom and nature around us in a different way. In any case, from that meta concept to, the X's and O's of how we handle the animal kingdom, how about it for Dawn, everybody? Karen Dawn from DawnWatch. If you put Dawn in the Google and you put watch after Dawn, you'll come up with DawnWatch. And Karen Dawn, who's a longtime activist. So what do you have for us today, Karen?
Today, unfortunately, I have the Mustang roundups, Mustang and Bureau roundups that are conducted by our government on behalf of the cattle ranching industry.
Is that the Bureau of Land Management that does that? BLM?
Yes, no. Yes, the BLM. And I'm pleased NBC covered this over the weekend. And I was actually pleased that for once they covered it. And I'm going to ask Albert in a moment to share it with the audio, because I was so surprised that they actually usually I'm yelling at the television screen saying, it's for the cattle ranchers, it's for the cattle ranchers. And instead they actually presented it as it is. Finally, we've gotten to the point where they acknowledge that it is a battle between the horses and the cattle ranchers. And they round up these horses. It costs the taxpayers $80 million. And they then try and get them adopted.
And where are they rounding them up from? Where?
From the plains in Nevada, mostly. Actually, Albert, if you don't mind sort of playing the video with the audio about, and this is,
okay.
It starts with, you'll see the roundup, and then you'll.
Okay, go ahead, Albert, run it, please.
Albert, thank you.
Every year, the BLM rounds up thousands of horses and puts them in federal corrals, costing the U.S. taxpayer more than $80 million a year. And so in 2019, the Bureau started paying people to adopt up to 4 wild horses each, giving them $1,000 per horse. In exchange, adopters agree to at least one at-home wellness check. Waddell says as a result, adoptions increased to record levels. But a 2021 New York Times investigation revealed some adopters were pocketing the money. And as soon as they could, 12 months later, selling the horses at auctions frequented by slaughterhouse brokers.
You're sending droves of these federally protected animals who helped build this country to slaughter.
And yet, 2 years later, an NBC News investigation found federally branded horses are still being offered up for sale to slaughter brokers. Following a public records request, we found multiple instances of horses adopted through the BLM program, apparently for sale in self-described kill pens.
When they apply for private ownership and it's granted to them, that animal then does become private property. It is no longer protected by the Wild Free Roaming Horses and Burros Act.
Back on the range, the battle between Mustangs and cattle continues, with no obvious way to rein in America's wild horses. Aaron McLaughlin, NBC News, Tonopah, Nevada.
I got the rein in. Clever. The thing here is they're competing for grassland, for grazing land. Is that it, Karen?
It's exactly it. And again, thank heavens the news is finally acknowledging that, so that, DawnWatch's thing is to get the news to do a better job of covering animal issues so that people can make informed choices in line with their own values. So if people think it's fine to throw the horses off the land so that the cattle can graze, at least they know that is what is happening. Whereas it used to be presented as, oh, the horses are starving, there's not enough grassland for them, etc. But the truth is, and this is easily, you can Google this and find this out, there were 2 million wild horses on the land in 1900. And there are less than 80,000 now. And that's because in 1900, we didn't have millions of cattle all over the land. So what happens now is that the cattle ranching lobby, which is rich, they pay lots of legislators. It's as usual, the lobbies own the legislators. And so this roundup keeps happening. And we drive the cattle off the land, because the Mustangs off the land and the Boers, because it makes the cattle ranchers happy, because the Mustangs.
That's about money. That's about money.
Follow the money as usual. And I would
Chris,
love it if Albert, sorry. I was
Chris
just going to say, if
says,
Albert wants to share
okay,
some of this video, this is what the roundups look like. And they chase the horses with helicopters, absolutely terrifying, into these corrals. And then this year, the issue was that they got them in the corrals, and then some of them died during the chase. Some of them died from the heat within the corrals. In one of these videos, I said, you guys are going to see a horse trying to escape and breaking his leg. I think it's the next one, maybe, Albert, the next video. We see one of the horses who tries to escape. He breaks his leg. And I spared your viewers, Mark, here he is. I spared the next part of the video where you see this guy racing off with his back leg flapping behind him in the wind. They chase him for half an hour like that before shooting him. And what you're seeing now is just people commenting.
Yeah. We can stop with that, Albert. Thank you. This is, I was trying to handle various comments along the way that kind of incense me, but this is obviously a situation that is angering, but Chris, who oftentimes likes to stir the pot, horses aren't native to the Americas. You're not native to the Americas either, Chris, from last I checked. Things have changed a lot since what's native to the Americas. There is absolutely no high ground in blank isn't native to the Americas. We have so changed what's native and what exists in this country from what was actually here in the Americas. So please, just for now, nothing personal, but just stow that argument.
And cattle are not native either.
Of course
we're doing
not.
It for the cattle.
Yeah. And we have, again, thrown off these communities, these wildlife communities, so much because of the unbridled growth of cattle, that we find ourselves in this situation where our government is dealing with this population of horses in this ruthless fashion. So now to the question, what can we do? We, on this show, like to bring some attention to this. You have a newsletter that, talks about the various victories in some of these stories as they exist in the media. What can we do, though, as citizens of this country to make an impact on the situation, which is really gross?
Right. Well, a couple of things. As an animal rights activist, a vegan, obviously, I will always, in my book, Thanking the Monkey, which I hope you got a copy of.
I just got, and I want to talk. I was actually going to suggest we talk about stuff from that book today, but let's do it next time, maybe.
Yeah, next time. The section on this in that book is called "Kill a Horse to Eat a Cow," and that's so. When you are eating beef, it's the weird thing about beef is that they are the animals who tend to be the least badly treated of all the animals, in that they do get to graze on these lands until, for the last 6 months of their lives, they're sent to these feeding pens, which are horrendous. But
you even say in your book something like you don't say this, but maybe you do say this. I'm trying to remember something along the lines like, if I had to pick all the wildlife, or with all the animals that are used in our food, beef is probably the best life of any of them.
That's absolutely true until the last 6 months, which is just as awful as most of them. But at least, when you're driving along and you see cows on the range, yes, they get to graze. The problem is, the reason they get to graze is that we're throwing the Mustangs off. This year in the roundup so far, and they're going to get started again, I think, this coming week, 11 Mustangs died during the roundups. But I'm going to ask your listeners to, I think the answer, by the way, is to end these roundups. And it's hard for me because they say one person can do anything, nobody can do everything. And I do not devote myself to the Mustang roundups. I devote myself to general media issues.
Sure.
So it's easy for me to come in and say to the people who are devoted to this, and bless them, they're the reason we have this footage. But they had a court case recently asking that this year that the roundups be put on hold because 11 horses had died. It's horrible. It's inhumane. I would suggest that might not be the answer, and I'd be really interested in knowing what non-animal rights people do feel about this. But very much like Blackfish made it clear, orcas do not belong in captivity. And people finally get it, and we see laws where it's becoming illegal to keep orcas in captivity, and you certainly can't capture them anymore. I would love people to consider what is the difference when you have a wild Mustang out there in the wild, running along the ranges with his family. What if the roundup doesn't kill them, but they are put in pens? And what if we saw from that NBC coverage, bless them, what happens with the adoptions, that they hold on to them for a year and then they get the $1,000 for adopting, and then they get the money for selling them to the kill buyer afterwards for slaughter. But what if that doesn't happen? What if the animal just ends up in captivity, completely separated from his whole family, being ridden by human children or working in human fields? Is that really okay? Is that any better than it was for Lolita, who we discussed a few weeks ago on the show? And I know your listeners were very, very sensitive to her plight. I don't think it's all that different for the Mustangs. And there's a movie, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. And if you haven't seen it, Mark, and if some of your folks haven't seen it, it's called Spirit. And it's a DreamWorks movie. It came out about 10 years ago. And I wish this movie was compulsory viewing in all schools, even in Florida, where it discusses, it's just a movie, a DreamWorks movie, an animated movie with very little vocal, but it's beautifully done. It was nominated for an Oscar. And I'm trying to remember if it got the animated Oscar. And it just makes you question
there it is. Spirit.
Whether there it is. And it's the movie, not the TV show. So if you Google it, it's Spirit, the DreamWorks movie. And it's absolutely beautiful. And you watch it and you really question whether horses belong in captivity. Whether or not they do, they certainly, the ones who are living wild on the range with their family members, I think a lot of people would agree, just leave them there. And it doesn't often get said that it isn't suddenly okay if we do it a little more humanely. The reason I feel so strongly about this is because it's a bipartisan issue, because Republicans love horses as well. And as somebody who monitors the media, I know that the Washington Times, which is the conservative newspaper in Washington, D.C., wrote a couple of editorials maybe 10 years ago against horse slaughter when it was legal in the USA. Then for a while it wasn't legal. Now it's legal again. We've got to get horse slaughter banned, but I think it's time to say we have got to get these roundups banned. And even if you don't think we have a hope of getting them banned, and I actually think we do. I mean, for God's sake, if you look what Cory Booker and Rand Paul did together on vivisection, we can certainly get a horse-loving Republican to join with Cory Booker or somebody else on these Mustang roundups. Even if it isn't to get them banned, a book I may have mentioned on the show before, I will mention it any time I get a chance. It's not an animal rights book. It's a book called Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion. And it's a book I ask every activist to read, and it teaches us many things. One of them is that you don't sort of yell at people to do things your way. You have to get them to come from their own thinking. But the point that I'm thinking of now is that you never ask for exactly what you really want to get. You ask for more. So if we want the roundups done humanely, oh my gosh, at least ask that they be banned completely. But I actually think we do have a shot of getting them banned completely if we make sure that we do it in a bipartisan way, that we get Republicans and Democrats on board. One of the ways you get to Republicans is mentioning, hey, this is costing taxpayers $80 million a year. Republicans tend not to like subsidies, and this is a massive subsidy to the cattle ranching industry. And Democrats tend not to like massive cruelty to animals, and certainly most Republicans don't either. So I think that is the answer. One is to think about it when you're ordering a steak, that you are contributing to the scenes we just saw. But another is to start to call for the end of these roundups, because they're about to get started again. And
yeah, I really like the second plan, which is the call to I mean, obviously, I'm already on the first plan, but I like, in terms of this one issue, I would encourage people.
A lot more achievable.
Yeah,
I think you and I agree that the
the
whole world isn't about to go vegan, but why not end these roundups?
I was just in Nevada to see the wild horses, says KF. Called the BLM asking in what specific areas they were. They were abrupt and rude, and now I know why. And why I saw none. Anyone interested? At Sky Dog Sanctuary is what KF is referring us to. So
there's actually a town that is in love with their wild horses and bureaus. And they come into the town and they've named them and they know them by name. And the BLM went and rounded up the horses and bureaus in that town. And the town is trying to buy them back to set them free. This is crazy. This is a taxpayer
That's
expense.
a story. That's a story too, isn't it? Is this the... oh, this is nice for you. So grateful for the Dawn Watch, even though it's brutal to hear. Thanks, Karen and Mark. There you go.
Speaking of brutal, I want to mention to you, Mark, also, I mentioned that Spirit is an absolutely beautiful, beautiful movie to watch, truly enjoyable. And I do recommend it so highly. Less enjoyable, but of a lot of interest to Marilyn Monroe fans and Frank Sinatra fans, is a movie called The Misfits, which was made in, I think, 1963 or something. It was her last movie. And it's beautiful, and her acting is beautiful. And it is about the wild Mustang roundups. Mm-hmm. And you see in this the extraordinary cruelty, and her character in it is distressed by them.
What is the movie? What's that movie?
Misfits. It was Marilyn Monroe's last movie. It's gorgeous, and it's about this issue. The horrible irony is that in filming for the movie, they managed to kill some wild horses.
Oh, I mean, it's just almost goes without saying.
Helicopter accidentally clipped a couple. I mean,
incredible.
Our relationship with animals is crazy.
Karen, love Dawn Watch because there's oftentimes good news in Dawn Watch. Like, you'll oftentimes say, hey, front page story on such and such. And so just the discussion of these things, I think, is good news in itself. We become aware of it. And again, this BLM atrocity that is perpetrated against the wild horse population to allow ranchers unfettered use of this land, it's something that needs to be talked about, and it's something that needs to be changed. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next week. Dawn Watch. DawnWatch.com. Bye, Karen.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.